Bless us in this time by your word. Open our ears to hear something new. Strengthen our hearts and transform our souls. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Fall is my very favorite time of year. The beauty of creation hits us squarely in the face. God says, look at what I have made. Look at all that I have given you. The beauty of the bright yellow and the stunning oranges. The leaves of the Japanese maple outside my window have turned this dark purple, and soon they will be this brilliant red to challenge the burning bush in its beauty. Sacred creation. And it is harvest time, when apples and pears and beets and grapes and sweet potatoes and butternut squash and carrots and pumpkins, of course, cranberries and pomegranates and parsnips are all in season. I used to live on Long Island, and this is the time of year when we still had time to drive out to the East End to one of the farm stands that sold pies. Delicious, amazing pies. It was amazing to get one of those pies. We are blessed. Creation is a celebration of the abundance of God's goodness. 7 times in the first chapter of Genesis, we hear the word good over and over. Light, darkness, moon, sun, stars, land, ocean, birds, fish, animals, human beings. Good, good, good. Altogether, very good. Life is abundant. God makes provision for all. Plants have sunlight and water. Animals and humans have food. Everything in its own kind is to multiply the goodness of God. God's abundant goodness revealed in creation is the foundation of our faith. Now, from beginning to end, Jesus also said, I came that you might have life and have it abundantly. And what is interesting about this story of creation is it is not the beginning of our story of faith. Those who put the canon, the stories, the books, and our Bible together, put it in this order for that reason. The oldest stories of our faith are when the Hebrew people escaped Egypt. And they come from 3,000 years ago at least. But the story of Genesis 1 came together as the beautiful litany in our Bible 700 years later. But they chose to put it first. And even more interesting is it was written during the time of the nation's most difficult times. This beauty of the story of God's abundance was written during the time we call the exile. Israel had been conquered by the Babylonians. The kings of Israel and his supporters were either murdered or round up and deported to Babylon. It seemed to them that the God of abundance, the God of Israel, had been defeated. They lost their hope. So this creation story was written by the priests to be a proclamation of faith, to say God is still God. God created and continues to create abundant life. God is still good. God is still the source of goodness, even in our most desperate times. God is gracious and God is generous. God supports us. God sustains us when we most need it. God gives life. An abundance of goodness, it is an important affirmation for our faith today, because we are bombarded with messages not of abundance, but of scarcity every single day. There are garden variety messages of scarcity that constantly tell us we need more and more and more money to secure things, more time, more success. Some things we do truly need. We need food, and we need shelter and love. It's great to have a solid education and health care. But still, I know that I look to the phone in the person's hand next to me, and I wonder if I need an upgrade. And there are more frightening messages of scarcity being shouted. There aren't enough homes or jobs. The FEMA money is all gone. There isn't any help. The people who need disaster relief funds, they don't get them because it's all been spent. Our nations and schools and homes do not have enough security. Fear, all comes from scarcity. We feel cheated. It's difficult to be kind to those we fear. And it is so easy to become angry. And there's so much anger. Grounding our lives in God's abundance and goodness calms fear. It helps us be generous in our own lives. Then we are free to help the poor and the stranger, no matter where they were born. We work for justice with compassion and mercy, knowing justice makes for peace. We share our blessings because we know we have been blessed. Now is our time to trust in the abundance of God's goodness and generosity. It is our time to lean on the everlasting arms of God, knowing that God holds us, knowing that God has given us a community of faith so we can lean on each other. Now is our time to say we trust. We trust in goodness and abundance, and we will not be afraid. And we will not be afraid. There are two very powerful practices that help us to increase our faith in God's abundant goodness. The first is to practice gratitude. It is noticing what we have instead of what we don't have. I've got an iPhone 12. That's pretty nice. Maybe I don't need a 16. It is naming all the things for which we are grateful, for counting our blessings. It is going outside and looking at the leaves on the trees. I have to do this gratitude practice every night when I go to bed, because I have a tendency in my brain to start thinking about all the things that went wrong. And I can sink very deeply into the fear of what I didn't do, of the people I disappointed, that maybe I'm not good enough. It's only when I turn my mind and I start naming from morning to evening the good things, then I stop thinking about myself and I can turn outward and start thinking about others. And even while I'm doing this gratitude, I have to stop because I'll sink and I have to start again. And the second thing, can we guess? It's practicing generosity. Just the practice of giving helps us trust. It opens our hearts. We love more and more. Giving to God, giving to God's kingdom and purposes through the work of the church is a spiritual act of worship. It is a decision to live in abundance. As Susan said, the church budget is tight. Every year costs rise. And it is so easy to be tempted to fall into that trap of scarcity. We don't have enough. We don't have enough. What are we going to cut? My friends, the church is not a budget. Who is the church? We are the church, and together we have more than enough to make this church thrive. We have an abundance. We can't live in that mindset of scarcity. We must live in abundance. Together, we have all we need and more to boldly proclaim God's abundant goodness. Our world so badly needs us to be a church that is brave, that is bold, that will not cave to fear, but proclaim God's abundant goodness and love to all. Amen.